Good day, Suidlanders, and welcome to Suidlanders. I'm not going to give you a date because, quite honestly, I'm recording it on a Monday, and I've missed 2 Fridays. For those of you who don't know the story, I'll give you a quick rundown. If it's boring to you, you can skip forward to the meaty stuff. But I live in Hofmeyer, or 19 kilometers outside the town of Hofmeyer. I occupy a farmstead. My landlord is the famous Louis Hutton. He farms about an hour and a quarter away, or lives about an hour and a quarter away. And I work for Suidlanders. I draw a salary from Suidlanders. I moved here 9.5 months ago. And when I got here, the first thing that I attempted to do was have wireless installed at the farmstead. It hadn't been occupied for some years. The wireless company, a company called Herotel, provides wireless service to remote locations, rural locations, came and did a test here with a very helpful team of young men. And they, to their credit, said to me, "Sir, we can't give you decent, acceptable wireless. We will not be able to keep the promises on our contract of whatever it is, 4 megabytes a second. You're just located too awkwardly beneath the mountains. Your neighbors have got Wi-Fi. We can't do the same for you. You're just in precisely the wrong location." Then I got a bootleg Starlinker, Elon Musk, Tesla. They are unbelievable. They're like greased lightning. But because it was bootleg, it was shut off after some time. Then, after much ado, I got satellite installed. Then the Starlinker we were able to get it up and running for a short while, and now it's gone off again. And I have to go cap in hand to the conventional satellite service provider and ask them to come back. They are going to be furious. Now, being 19 kilometers from the door, it so happens that for about the first 10 kilometers, the road to the dorp is the worst in South Africa. Hands down and by far, I promise you. We've had a lot of rain, and traveling that road to go to the dorp to get signal is firstly very costly. It's a 38-kilometer return trip, 76 kilometers if I do it twice a day for 3 or 4, whatever number of hours. And with the rain and the state of the road, I've done a lot of harm to my bakkie. You kind of have to see the road to believe it. And as Marius from Radio Groot Rivier said to me the other day, when I was explaining to him what a pickle I was in, he said to me, "Fortunately, we've all been on that road, so we know you're not exaggerating. It'll destroy your bakkie." So much so that I've had to throw away 5 tires. The puncture that I got in each case was so bad that I just had to throw the tire away, couldn't be repaired. And that's just in January and February of this year, or from mid-January till mid-March, something like that. And over the same period, I got another 8 punctures. The long and the short of this story, actually a long story now, it is very, very, very difficult for me to do my work, and very costly in terms of fuel, driving backwards and forwards and trying to find signal and working on my phone instead of on my computer in my office with a camera and a proper microphone and so on and so forth. So please bear with me. I have really fought the good fight over the past, going on for 10 months, over which period I had Starlink for under 4 months and the other satellite for about a month. It has been rough. Anyway, let's get down to business. At the moment, I have to choose my words very, very carefully. And I don't think that there's anybody who could do a better job, with all due respect, of endeavoring to communicate the most sensitive of all sensitive stories under my present circumstance, having to toe a very, very, very fine line for the audience's sake, too. Many of you will be wondering what is going on with the Donald Trump's announcements about annexing Greenland and taking back Panama Canal, and making Canada the 51st state, and the tariffs, and the asylum/refugee initiative for Afrikaners, and Iran. Related to those four topics is Ukraine and Gaza, but we won't touch on them so very much today. I probably should have said this at the beginning of this video or this voice recording, but those of you who are not interested in eschatological analyses will not enjoy this video recording, this narration. But sadly, the only explanation for these bewildering events and their interconnection is eschatological. There is a group in the world that believes that the very worst sin is not to believe in God. And it can be expressed in different words, but it's one concept. It can also be expressed as to believe that the Bible is not divine is the worst sin, worse than harming a child, worse than anything. And they have a proverb, which is not so much a doctrine of faith as a proverb. Nevertheless, it is instructive when viewed in the light of the very doctrine of faith that I've just described to you. The proverb goes, equal to the worst sin is not to hasten the coming of the Messiah. You and I don't have to share those beliefs, but they are, if you imagine in your mind's eye, an enormous castle built into a mountain, absolutely impregnable, built into the mountain with a door, a gate, if you like. The gate is 100 foot thick and there's no way to get in. You will be stymied forever, but somebody gives you a key. This is the key that unlocks all of these bewildering, perplexing events that are going on in the world right now. By now, most of you will have figured out that the explanations given just don't wash, as I've been trying to explain to people for a number of years, although the events we're discussing right now are more recent. But this goes back a long way, let it suffice to say. Now, another caveat. I know we're taking some time to get to the point, but hopefully this will be very, very instructive in the end. Nothing that I'm about to tell you has been figured out by me. There was no inspiration or intuition except whatever I might have received by the grace of God from the Holy Spirit. However, nothing is creative. All of what I'm about to tell you, every single last word is written down in black on white, and one day we will discuss the sources, but they're all over the internet and not difficult to find. They believe that everything must be done to ensure that the Messiah arrives in the year 5785, which began in September of last year. In the year 5785, during that portion of that year that overlaps with the Roman Catholic calendar or calendars 2025. Again, this is all written down there, videos about it, the whole lot. When those 2 years in turn overlap with the year of the Boomslang, believe it or not, the year 2025 began on the 1st of January this year. The year of the Boomslang began on the 29th of January this year, meaning that from the time of the 29th of January is the 1 year in history in which the coming of the Messiah must be hastened above all other years. Everything must be done. Now, there are certain circumstances in which that must happen. There must be some red heifers, verse for the Afrikaners. A heifer is a girl cattle, a cow, that has not been covered by a bull. And in this case, they may not have been used by men for any purpose. So you can't have, no man may have leaned on them, to give a rest to his weary legs, his sore back, for instance. And they must be perfectly red. They may not have any white hairs unless they have two that are separate from one another. Two that are separate, so they may not have two next to one another. And they may have three altogether. Now there are 5 such cows in the world, and they were made by genetic modification by a farmer in the USA with some other people, but he was the main guy. And the temple has to be rebuilt, and the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque have to be razed for that purpose. And there has to be a terminal war in which most of the world is wiped out. And that war has to very much involve Iran. Now, some of you will be saying, oh, yes, the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. You're not wrong, not at all. I'm just giving the extra that nobody ever talks about, except for, as I say, the small clique. The war, in fact, that they have to incite in this year and no other, is not meant to be fought by them. Not really, not principally. They can instigate it, agitate it, goad it, but the principal participants or combatants have to be the 35 non-white races of the world and the 35 white races of the world, the 35 races of Edom or Esau. And that's obviously a debatable thing in many of your minds. Many people will be saying, we are the true Israel. Yes. Nevertheless, that's not their belief. And that's all that counts when endeavoring to assess their motivations. And the 35 nations of proto-nations of Ishmael. Now, that's a little bit confusing because those people who talk about the sons of Ham, Canaan, etc., that's not Ishmael, which came first. I'm keeping it simple. Permit me to assure you that I am not making this up, that these are their words, not mine, as much as they may be contradictory to you. So, what's happening at the moment is that the world is gearing up for a massive conflict that has to take place now. When I say now, the ideal time is in this week, according to them. However, let me caution you. That doesn't mean that the first and the last nuclear bomb fall in this week. Not at all. In their defense, much as I am not on their team, I must defend their way of reasoning from people who are unfamiliar with this subject, leaping to their own conclusions about what is accurate and what is inaccurate. In their defense, it's a bit like, let's say you worked on a mine, first day at work, and you were getting ready for your first shift, on your way to the lift, and you heard an explosion, and you asked a long-time worker, uh, they're blasting down below. Yeah. Oh, goodness me. So they just did that now. Wow, just as I arrived. How cool. He might say to you, well, in fact, it's a controlled, it happened, they pressed the button last week, and then they ensure that it happens between two shifts. The other guys have just come out of the lift. We're about to get in the lift to go down. It's the safest time when there's nobody down there. But they do it all by remote, and there's a fuse process almost, if you like. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. All that you witnessed was this very moment of the blast. In fact, it goes back 24 hours, a week. If nuclear war doesn't take place this week, the people who are responsible for initiating it may say, yes, but the box of matches was bought today, or the match was lit today, or the fuse was lit today, or in this week. And that's good enough for us. So this week, right now, Easter week of 2025 is meant to be the week of the great explosion. Now, I'll tell you something else that pertains to this. In the book of Ecclesiastes, you can look this up. Chapter 3 is a description of times, seasons, if you like. The belief is, whether you and I share it or not, it's immaterial. Their belief is that those 28 statements represent 28 epochs. A time to live, a time to die, a time to sow, a time to reap, a time to build up, a time to tear down. And the first 26 of them there's a degree of choice. If you open a demolition company in the time for tearing down, you're going to be doing the right thing in the right season. If you become a farmer, a crop farmer, in the time for sowing, you're going to do well. But the last two are And obviously, if you don't, well, that's your tough luck. You didn't take advantage of the season that the Lord presented you with. However, the last two are what is known as ineluctable. You can't avoid them. There's nothing you can do to not participate in them or to participate in them. And they are sometimes translated as a time for war or a time for peace. But a better translation might be a time of war and a time of peace, as opposed to a time two, a time two, a time two, a time two in the first 26 times. The belief is that we are in the year 5785, and that there will be 6,000 years granted to mankind before there is a 1,000-year great reset, as they call it. Meaning that there are 215 years, struggling with basic arithmetic here. 6,000 minus 5,785 is 215. That there are 215 years to go to the Great Reset. If you take 6,000 and divide it by 28 epochs, you get 214.24 years. Meaning that we are on the verge of entering the last 214 years. We have 215 years to go to the year 6,000. 6,000 minus 5,785 is 215. And the final epoch is only 214.24 years long, or shall be. Meaning that we are within the very last opportunity for the making of war before a time of peace. And that any such war that is required as we are contemplating here, must be prosecuted prior to the time of peace, the epoch of peace. It must be completed, meaning that we're running out of time. We're also running out of time concerning the 3 red heifers. It is my personal conviction that they have already been burned. You can look it up in, I believe it's Numbers 19. Anyway, just look up red heifer in your, what is the word? Concordance? Is that the right word? At the back of your Bible, and it'll take you to the right verse. Red or heifer. One of those will work. Red heifer. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will help you to understand why it is that Donald Trump is making such peculiar moves. He is aware of this timeline. He's aware of the role that shall be played by South Africa. He's aware of and we can get into that another time, but he has spoken about it on at least 2 occasions long prior to this presidency. John Bolton, his former national security advisor, alluded to it in his book. And I was contacted by I wouldn't describe him as a representative of the White House, but somebody who was who was part of the White House. I'm contradicting myself a little bit, but I don't want to go into too much detail. Part of that inner circle in the first Trump administration. He is aware of what facilities and lands, etc., will be strategic and necessary. Panama's canal being one of them, Greenland for North Atlantic shipping being another, Canada for access to the North Pole. If you've got a globe at home, take a look at the globe to see the distance, the tiny, short distance over the North Pole between the United States of America and Russia. We traditionally think of them as being very far apart from one another because we look at a Mercator projection, 2-dimensional map, and they are, thousands of miles apart across the Atlantic and the North Atlantic and the White Sea, when in fact they are less than next door neighbors. The next door neighbors in a block of flats, really, if you look from the north, or at the north, the northern route between them. And it explains why, in spite of the fact that the United States intelligence agencies, all of them, every single one, bar none, said in October last year that Iran does not have a nuclear bomb and is not working on a nuclear bomb. And yet, Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu are talking as if they'd have one day after tomorrow morning, early, before breakfast. It's all false. It's all utterly and entirely false. 15 United States intelligence agencies concurred in one document. And that was not for the first time that they've said that. What is more, the IAEA and other bodies, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and other bodies have done countless inspections in Iraq. Inspections after which they've never said we were denied access to something, or we believed that there was a certain place that was secret. On the contrary, with the assistance of satellite and Doppler radar and ground penetrating radar and I'm forgetting the name now of these things that measure radiation, they have concluded that they were given access to everything that Iran had or has. And they were denied access to nothing. Iran does not have a nuclear bomb. So if you're bewildered and perplexed by this apparent frantic conversation or series of exchanges and threats and bullyings and non-starter conversations, that's the reason. There was something else that I wanted to mention. Oh, yes, the tariffs. In wartime, before any war in history, every society or state endeavors to make itself less vulnerable to outside support and supply and assistance and so on. You try to insulate yourself from market forces and from people who are not you. They may be your friend and your ally, but they're not you. Or they may be neutral, or they may be your enemy. Those tariffs are going to, as a matter of fact, crimp world trade. We'll see how things pan out. I don't have a crystal ball. They might be increased, they might be reduced. We see he's given the Chinese a concession, but you can rest assured that was not at the instigation of the Chinese. Oh, dear me, everybody's looking at it the wrong way. That's because the people who need the chips, so he's given a concession to the Chinese chip industry. I'm using the wrong word. Computer software, technology, IT industry. Those items are not needed by the Chinese. Those items are needed by America, the military industrial complex. And somehow the whole world is looking at it from looking like have you ever looked the wrong way down a pair of binoculars or telescope? Goodness gracious. So for America's sake, he's made a concession there. And there will be other concessions and there will be changes and shifts and what have you. But generally speaking, he's doing what everybody else has ever done. Every emperor, president, prime minister, baron, and king in history. That's about it, guys. I think we'll have many more such conversations. I think Arnold and I have now figured out that the easiest way to do this is just by by voice, WhatsApp, and I'll go into town every couple of days until I've got the satellite up and running. But that is also not a simple matter. I have to pay very, very large penalty fees for having had the satellite previously and then not, disengaging. But yeah, bear with me. We keep fighting the good fight. We never, ever, ever give up. Okie dokes, everybody. Thank you. Hope you found this interesting. And as I say, this week, the Easter week. But do not mistake that to mean that definitively the bomb goes off this week. It doesn't work quite so simplistically.